Hey there Luma, it's Denise from lumahead.com, and this time I want to show you how to make an acorn doll. It's a two-piece project with a pouch and a matching doll which fits nice and snug inside the pouch. Just tuck your doll in and then pull on the drawstring, and together they create this acorn. I got the idea from a children's book that said that the tiniest acorn became the mighty oak tree. So I created some postcards to go with the project that say this teeny tiny doll will always remind you that the tiniest acorn can grow to be the mightiest oak tree. What a great message for both children and adults. And so just like I did with the worry worm, where I created postcards and tags to go with the written project, I've done the same with this. I've created the postcards and the tags, and I'll put a link in the description for the pattern. Now you're going to need a 12 peg flower loom, 12 yards of worsted weight yarn in 2 colors, hook, needle, scissors, some fine markers, and a blush and applicator. All right, let's begin. We're going to be using a single strand of worsted weight yarn, and I'm going to secure mine to the anchor peg using a simple knot. You can use a slip knot if you're more comfortable. And then you take the working yarn between the first and last peg, and the direction doesn't matter. You could go right or left. It has no effect on the pattern. And we're going to drawstring cast on these 12 pegs. So going with the working yarn behind peg 1, you're going to bring it in front of peg 2 and then behind the 3rd peg, and you see that we're going kind of in a in and out zigzag kind of method to put the yarn on the loom. And once you get to peg 12, you're in front of peg 12, you're going to take it behind peg 1 and then lay that working yarn loosely over a few of the pegs. I'm going midway, take it to the middle, hold it with your fingers, and then you see peg 1 has no loops, peg 2 has 2, so you take the bottom over the top and knit off. The next one doesn't have any, and you're basically just knitting off every peg that has 2 loops. And then you're going to take the working yarn and lay it over a few more pegs until you get to that peg 12, knitting off again every peg that has 2 loops. Once you knit off peg 12, you're done with the cast on, and now we're going to do rows 1 through 5. We're just going to knit the row. So only on row 1, peg 1 has no loops, so you're going to take the working yarn and put it over pegs 1 and 2 because 1 has no loop, and you're going to knit off peg 2. And then we're going to use either the U-wrap version or the flat version of the knit stitch. To do the U-wrap, half wrap your peg, take the bottom loop over the top and knit off. And one more time, your half wrap and knit off. Now for me, I prefer, especially on this project, to use the flat stitch, so I'm laying mine over a few pegs and then knitting the bottom loop over the top. It's just a tighter stitch, and I prefer to do that. Remember, you need 5 rows. So as you guys continue to knit, I'm going to take the opportunity to say thank you to Carol Maple from Promise Learning ATL, Elise Petron, Penny Pitchard, Chris Stone, Barbara Ledger, and our new member Joel Gittleman for covering the cost of closed captioning this video. Thank you so very much. That is so awesome. All right, once you knit off that peg 12, you're done with that row 1. Remember, you need 5, but starting with row 2, you see that peg 1 now does have a loop, and you're going to knit all 12 pegs using either the U-wrap version of the knit stitch, the true, or the flat. And once you're done with those 5 rows, then we're going to change color. We just did the bottom of the acorn of the pouch, and so now we're going to do the top portion of the pouch. So we're going to cut that working yarn and change color to the color that you want on the top. I like the dark brown, so it's like a chocolate, deep chocolate brown, and I'm going to take the new color, wrap the old one around that new color, and I'm going to make 2 knots to make sure that my yarn is nice and tight. There are many ways to change color, so you figure out what's the method that works for you. You know, this has worked for me for a long time, so I just do it this way. But feel free to use any method that you find online. All right, and now we're ready to do row 6, where we're going to basically just knit this row, knit all 12 pegs using the U, flat, or true version for 1 row. The reason we're doing this 1 row of knit stitches when we change colors is because we're going to start doing purl stitches and we want to avoid dashes. So rows 7 through 11 are 5 rows of just purl stitches. And to do that purl stitch, you're going to take the working yarn and put it under the existing loop on peg 1, and from the top take your hook and we're going to scoop up the working yarn and create a new loop. And there's your new loop. And then you're going to remove the existing loop that's on the peg. Now you could do this with your hand or you could do this with your hook. In this case, this one was a little tight, and so I used the assistance of my hook to take the existing loop off, put the new loop on, and pull to tighten that purl stitch. And you want to do that every time. So again, you're going to put that working yarn under the existing loop, scoop up from the top and create a new loop, take the old one off, put the new loop on, and pull. All right, those are the purl stitches, and you need 5 rows of them. So continue to do this. In the meantime, I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of music while I take the opportunity to say thank you to Lorena Ruiz and all of my Patreon family members for their continued support of the channel. All right, guys, I'm going to just let you watch as I continue to do this row of purl stitches. Remember, you need 5 rows. Once you finish with your rows, then you're going to go ahead and we're going to cut this yarn. And by the way, I cut my yarn way too short. Don't make the same mistake. And get a needle, or you can get a crochet hook. Now I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle with that working yarn, and I'm going to make a knot. And this is why I told you that I cut it too short, because when I tried to make the knot, it came off the needle, right? My working yarn. So try to make sure that you have a long enough tail where you could do this without an issue, or like I said, you can always use a crochet hook. The point is that you want to secure, after you cut the yarn, you want to secure the yarn by making a knot and then weave it in from the inside, as I'm doing right here, to hide the string. And sometimes my hook gets caught in the yarn. But the point is that you want to bring it inside so it's not sticking up. And then you want to take a strand of that brown yarn, and you're going to make sure it's much longer than your yarn. So wrap it around the yarn and go about 1.5 times and then cut it. And now you have this single strand of yarn that you're going to secure to the anchor peg like you did before. I'm doing a knot. You could do a slip knot. And once you have that one strand of yarn secure, go ahead and thread a needle with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to cast off like this. And this is very different from the way you normally do it. And you'll see why. It's basically because you want a drawstring. So go ahead and feed that one strand through all of your loops. Make sure you have all 12 of them. You fed that one strand through all of them, then release it from the anchor peg, and you can, with your hook, take all the loops off of the pegs and release the project from your loom. Then you want to stretch your stitches. This is vitally important, otherwise your project looks like something real crazy. Make sure you do that. And then you can pull on your drawstrings just to bring it in a little bit. don't close it. Now you have this opening right here that you don't want. It looks like a V. You can leave it that way. It'll still be okay. It just doesn't look as good. So with your crochet hook, go ahead and bring it into that center. Like I said, it looks like a V. You're going to bring those 2 strands, one through each of it, through that open area, and now you'll be able to pull on those strings and it looks much better. All right, that was your cast on. Now go ahead and pull on the drawstring from, that was your cast off. This is your cast on. So go ahead and pull on the string from the cast on to make sure that it's completely closed on the bottom, and then thread a needle with that strand of yarn from your cast on, and you're going to feed it through the bottom. Your mission is to make sure that this opening is nice and closed. It's as if you were closing the top of a hat, right? So you pulled on the drawstring, it closed a little bit, but you want to make sure it's really well closed. And once you do that, you can go ahead and bring the string to the inside because you want to hide it away. And you can make a knot or not. I mean, it's not a biggie. I did. And then with your scissor, you can cut off the excess yarn. And, you know, weave in all your ends and cut any excess stuff. I basically just leave it in there. It's fine. You're not going to see it once you put the toy in. And you see that when you pull on the drawstring, it closes up a little. Make sure not to close it completely. Just put it to the side. We're going to work on the doll now. And so you're going to get your first color, which is the bottom part of the doll, and secure it to the anchor peg. I'm going to do a simple knot. You could do a slip knot. And the direction again doesn't matter. We're going to cast on 9 pegs. We're going to drawstring cast on 9 pegs. So just like we did before, you know, behind peg 1, in front of 2, behind 3, you're going to continue to do that, but you need to count off 9 pegs because you're not using all of the loom. You're only going to use 9 of the 12 pegs. So you're going to see that you have 3 pegs that have no yarn, right? Once you reach peg 9, you're going to turn around and go in the opposite direction. So lay the yarn over the previous 9 pegs. And just like before, you'll see some have 1 loop, some have 2. So you're going to knit off those pegs that have 2 loops only. And I'm sorry if my video gets a little blurry sometimes. I got a new monitor and it was not as helpful as I thought, so excuse that. Again, peg 1 does not have 2 loops, and you're done with your cast on. So you're going to take the yarn and you're going to wrap behind peg 1 and bring it forward and lay it loosely over the next few pegs. We're now going to get ready to knit 5 rows of 9 pegs flat. Now on row 1, remember that peg 1 only on row 1 doesn't have enough loops, so you're basically on row 1 really actually knitting 8 pegs. And another thing that I want you to make note of is that we're knitting back and forth and not in a row, right? So as you can see, I'm going to knit off that last peg, which is peg 9, and I'm going to take the yarn, tighten that last stitch, and I'm going to turn around and knit those 9 pegs. Now you push the loops down if you want to put the yarn over the existing loops, if that's easier for you. Either way, you need to knit your 9 pegs. And as you can see, I don't slip or skip that first peg. I just turn around and start with the peg 9. I'm going to knit all the way back to peg 1. Then I'm going to turn around and knit the row again because I need 5 rows. After you knit a few rows, always make sure to take the knot off the anchor peg. After you're done with those 5 rows, then we're going to go ahead and cut the yarn, and now we're going to add the color for the doll's face. So whatever color you want to use, this is the color you add now. I'm using a basic knot like I did before, or actually 2 knots. You use whatever method works for you to do a color change. And then we're going to now turn around and we're going to start knitting. We need to do 4 rows of 9 knit stitches, right? Just like before. So row 6 through 9. Once you're done with those rows, we're going to switch colors, and this time we're going to make sure that we use the color that we used for the top of the pouch, because this is the top of your acorn, so they need to match so that you don't see that change. All right, so I'm going to do 2 knots like I did before to change colors, and I'm doing this 1 row of knit stitches to avoid dashes. And once I'm done with that 1 row of knit stitches, which is row 10, right, 9 pegs of knit stitches, then I'm going to go ahead and do 4 rows of purl stitches. And you guys know how to do the purl stitch. You've already learned, and remember that we are knitting flat, so back and forth, rows 11 through 14 of 9 purl stitches. Once you're done with those rows of purls, you're going to take your working yarn and wrap it around your loom to create a long tail. Get your scissors and cut that strand of yarn, and then with your hook, you're going to take that 1 strand and feed it through every loop. And by the way, if you guys are interested in this hook cover, I'll put a link in the description to that video. So like I said, make sure that from the top you scoop up and you feed that strand of yarn through all of your 9 loops. And then with the same hook, you can just take the loops off of the pegs and release your project from the loom. The next thing you're going to do, which is very important, is you need to stretch your stitches, otherwise you have a big blob of yarn. Then pull on the 2 drawstrings to close the fabric and turn it into a tube. You're going to bring those 2 sides together and we're going to sew. So get your needle and you're going to thread the cast on drawstring, and then with that needle you're going to feed that string through all of those cast on loops and close the bottom, and then we're going to start sewing up. So you're going to go side to side with your thread and needle and then up. So side to side and then up, and I'm using the same brown strand throughout the whole doll body, including the face, because it really doesn't show, so I wouldn't worry about it. If you want to change colors, that's fine. Like I said, I just took that drawstring from the cast on and I just sew upward and throughout the whole body, including the top of the hat. Now I don't go all the way up with this 1 strand. I'm going to go to the top, and then I'm going to switch over and start using the cast off strand, which is basically the top of the hat. So I switch my needle to that strand, that cast off strand, and then just like before, I'm going to feed the needle through those loops that were on the loom in order to close this top nice and tight. And once I do that, I'm going to feed that strand up the middle because I'm going to create a loop up here. So I'm now going to hide that loop that I don't want to use anymore inside the doll. And then with my crochet hook, I'm going to hide it inside, and I'll cut that yarn so that it basically goes away, right? Then I'm going to do a slip knot with that top strand. Well, first I'm going to take that matching loose strand of yarn that matches the face and wrap it around twice between the face and the body to create a face, to divide it. And I'm going to make it very, very tight so that there's a distinction between the face and the body. All right, and then I'm going to do a slip knot with the top string, which is going to create that loop on the top of the hat. And once I get it to the size that I want, I tighten that knot, and then I'm going to take my needle, thread it again, and push that yarn inward to the bottom of the hat, right where the base is. And I'm going to make a knot to make sure that my loop doesn't come apart, right? So right there at the base of the hat, I create that loop, And once I have it nice and tight, I'm going to weave that in and cut it, right? And basically your doll is done. You just need to weave in those ends and make the face. So this is what it looks like. This is how you take the doll out. You see, you pull it from there and you have the little face, which I use a Sharpie to put the eyes. Just be real careful, and then put some blush on the cheeks. You can do the mouth with a red marker or red embroidery, and you're done. Hey, and one more thing, please share the video with others. That helps me big time. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, don't forget to love with your looms.